Hey, welcome into the Stinkin Truth Podcast. Mark Schlereth alongside Mike Evans, still in Alaska. Head out today to call the Green Bay Packers Seattle last preseason game. But as of right now, I got 1 day left in Alaska. Mike, how are you, buddy?
I'm great. I have loved getting pictures from you this week. You literally have a zoo in your backyard. You've sent me photos that have mooses. Big Bear was in your backyard. Mm-hmm. It's Mutual of Omaha Wild Kingdom stink style.
Yes, menagerie. Isn't that what they call a zoo? A menagerie. It was like the moose. Like I have this kindred spirit with moose because this moose was laying there, and she had her what do you call that? Her calf. I think it's a calf, right? Her baby. So anyhow, but bottom line, Mike, her shoulders, she was just like yoked. Like all she'd been in the gym is benching and doing shoulders. Skinny little legs. I am built identical to a moose, just giant upper body.
So moose
skinny
is your
little legs.
Animal. Moose is your spirit
moose.
Animal.
Moose is my spirit animal. She's unbelievable. She was so put together. And then we had a black bear, probably 200-pound black bear, just foraging up, eating bird seed, and just looking at us like, "What are you guys gonna do? Nothing." And I was like, "I'll wrestle your ass down to the ground and pin you." Is what I'll do. It's a high school state champion up here. You know that, don't you?
That's how you got. That's how you got to be a state champion by
that's right.
Bears. Practicing.
Wrestling bears. Yeah, it was. It's been an awesome week. This is the first day of rain we've had. It's been beautiful, sunshine. 65, 70 degrees. It's just been gorgeous. What a great week we had.
Well, good. Well, a lot of business, a lot of things happening. Let's start with what's going on in San Francisco. Sam Darnold has won the backup quarterback position to Brock Purdy. That leaves Trey Lance's future in complete limbo. So what happened there? Why didn't Trey Lance work out? And where does he go now?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. I don't know. I don't know that he'll stay there. I don't know that they'll move on from Trey. Like if they're trying to trade him, I've heard rumors about them trying to trade him. As soon as they signed Sam Darnold, it was over in my mind. And I'd been on a bunch of shows in San Francisco and everything else. That, well, Sam Darnold will be your backup. He'll win that position over Trey Lance. Trey Lance, I mean, you think about it. The best indicator of a guy being able to perform is how much he played in college. And Trey Lance played, 13, 16 games in college at a small school. And I've told you this. Here's what happened. What you thought you were getting in Trey Lance is not what you got in Trey Lance. You thought you were going to get this dynamic side-to-side, quick movement quarterback. Now, he can run straight line, and he can run fast straight line. But when they got him, he was a lot less like Lamar Jackson, and a lot more kind of straight line player. He wasn't that movement, make you miss guy. So what you thought you were getting, what you thought you were going to get is what we got with Anthony Richardson and some of these other guys that are coming in right now. They thought that they would be able to threaten the edge, set up all the RPO games, set up the zone read game, get to the edge, and really make guys miss and put defenses in that tough position of having to defend all 11 guys, especially in the running game. And what they found out with Trey was they really couldn't get him on the edge. He just wasn't that kind of an athlete. So when they did run him, they really ran him. If you go back and look, I called the game where he broke his ankle. It was week 2 of last year, San Francisco. It was Seattle at San Francisco. And what they really had created in the run game was more quarterback counter. And what people don't realize about counter is counter feels like or sounds like it's a wide play, right? Because you're pulling a guy, you're pulling a guard, you're pulling a tackle, or you're pulling a guard and a tight end. One guy's kicking out, the other guy's turning inside of that. And so it attacks the C gap. But where the counters normally break, the big counters, and remember, I played for Washington back in the Redskin days under Joe Gibbs, where counter Trey was our bread and butter. That was our identity. That was our number one play. And the majority of the big ones broke back behind the center. So they're a downhill inside run play. So you separate the defense, bam, 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 then you kick out the other side, and then it's that downhill play. And that's what they were running Trey on. They were running him on inside run plays where all that traffic is, all those bodies are. and he ended up breaking his ankle there. And like, he was not ready for prime time as a passer. And I'm not saying that he'll never be ready for prime time, but the issue that you get into with all players, and this is indicative of any player that you think is going to be great and isn't, and some of the players that you didn't realize are going to be great and are. It's your ability to process information quickly. What you see, what comes into your eyes, and how quickly your body reacts is the difference between being good and great and Hall of Fame. And there are a lot of guys that can't process quickly enough. And because you can't process quickly enough, it means your reaction to things is slow. Doesn't matter how fast you run, how high you jump. If your reaction to what you see is a tick off, you can't play. That's how it works.
Here's a stat for you. Since high school, Trey Lance has thrown 492 passes in a game. That's it.
Yeah.
And to your point that he needs to play. So what's the best situation for him?
Well, the best situation for him probably, believe it or not, is to stay in San Francisco and continue to learn. Continue to learn what's going on, practice against their defense, which is exceptional, and try to become the best player you can be. Try to become the best guy that you can be doing that. And then seeing if there's, San Francisco has this history, guys getting injured, see if there's an opportunity for you at some point. Now, I just don't think he's got any value. You gave up 3 first-rounders for him, right? I don't think there's any value on the open market for a guy that basically you've already given up on in year, 3? You've already said, hey, you're not our guy. As a matter of fact, a guy that's already failed in 2 places is ahead of you in Sam Darnold. Mike, that going back to that whole kind of concept of how quickly you process information. We've all done this in the radio game or in the podcasting world. You get a guy who's unbelievable on paper, meaning you get a writer that you're like, you've read this guy forever, right? And you're like, man, this dude is so good on paper. And he is one of the great writers. He's so smooth, so articulate. And you're like, man, we got to get him on this article about whoever. It's the best article I've ever read. And then you get the guy on and he stammers through and can't speak. And you're like, note to self, don't ever ask that guy to come on a radio program again. Now, is that guy stupid? No, he's incredibly smart. He's unbelievably smart, but he does not have the skill set to articulate the verbal word. He articulates the written word. And some guys don't have the skill set to take that information in and instantly make a decision. I always tell people this. You think about going into any game plan that you have. So you go in and let's say you have, I'm just going to make it simple for math purposes, right? Because my math skills are not good. They're not good at all. So let's say you have 10 running plays, and let's say you have 10 forms of pass protection or things that you're going to run into passing game. Just offensive line centric, okay? So in those 10 running plays, you run against, let's say you're running against a 3-4 front that has a reduction. Let's say they run a 4-3. Let's say they run an over front of 57. They run 55, or they run an under front 25. They have all these different fronts. They have their nickel fronts. They have a 4-2 nickel. They have a king nickel. They have a queen nickel. They have a 4-1 nickel. They have a 3-3 nickel. Okay. So I just gave you a bunch of different defenses. So let's say those 10 plays you're running them against a variation of 10 different defenses. And that defense can shift at a moment's notice. So you can be in the middle of your cage, blue 80. And right when you go set hut, just before you get set hut, the whole defense shifts, right? Linebacker moves out, safety rolls up, defensive line shifts over. Instantly, right before set, you have to be able to go, oh, that whole play changed. My whole responsibility changed. Now I got a different guy I got to block. And for me, as an offensive lineman, if I don't block him and I get John Elway hurt or hit, I'm selling cars at his dealership and he's still playing. Right. That's the ultimate how it works. And so when you go into a game plan, you've run 10 different running plays, but you're running them against 10 different defenses. it's 100 plays that change like that. And then the same thing for the passing game, from the protection standpoint, you got 100 different variations of plays essentially that you have to know within 2 seconds. And if even less than 2 seconds, a half a second, and if you don't get it right 100% of the time, you don't get to play. And so that ability to process that stuff quickly and make a snap decision and make it right, and then actually block, 300-pound behemoths that want to kill your quarterback. Like there's a lot that goes into it. And again, it doesn't make you stupid because you don't process information quickly. That's a God-given talent, just like being able to run a good 40 or being able to bench 225 a bunch of times. It's a you have to work at it, of course, but it's a God-given talent. And I would tell you right now on this podcast that the guys who are great college players who bust in the NFL more often than not can't process information quick enough. That's why they bust. That's why they're not good.
Well, it would appear right now that Sam Howell is processing information pretty well, because Ron Rivera came out and said the question mark is gone when it comes to the quarterback position. Sam Howell is going to be the starter. And I would gather that doesn't really surprise you. You saw Sam Howell last year. You liked him.
Yeah.
And you knew and you knew that Washington liked him.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. Like I've been to, and I did a bunch of Washington games last year, so I've been to practice and watched Sam Howell, just throwing dimes and cutting their defense apart. And their defense is pretty damn good last year. I mean, really, defensive front is phenomenal. And like they're a much better team. They're a lot more talented team than people probably give them credit for. Heineke last year. Like that dude is just the guy you want on your team. Like everybody wants him on their team. They just don't really want him to start, right? Like, but you really want him. And he's just gritty and he's competitive, and and he lacks a couple of the requisite skill sets that it takes to really kind of take your game to the next level at quarterback in the NFL. But everybody would love to have him as a backup. And then Carson Wentz you want to talk about a guy that just seemed to have flamed out. Nice guy and everything else, but man, just seems to have completely flamed out. But offensively, they're really a lot more talented than people think. Running back position, they got multiple guys that can not only run it, but catch the ball. Robinson is an absolute beast. They got 3 wide receivers who can flat out play. I mean, flat play. Samuel can play. Dotson is a player. He was a first rounder last year. And then obviously Terry McLaurin, scary Terry can flat play. So yeah, the big thing was both Ron Rivera and Scott Turner, who was the offensive coordinator at the time, were like, let me just tell you, this kid quarterback Howell, we got something. We're not quite sure what we have, but what we got in practice, like if this translates, we got ourselves a player. And they were pretty convinced that he was going to be a player, and and they didn't want to rush him into it and make him play early. But I think they're pretty confident in Sam Howell. And I know last year I witnessed it, and I talked to multiple people about it. He cut people up in practice, man. He just cut people up. And you start talking to guys, guys like Aaron Rodgers will tell you how I got good at off-platform throws, how I got good, like how coaches got confidence in me and everything else is I went out there and I made it my personal mission to absolutely destroy defense every day. And I think that's one of the things that Sam Howell did last year. And, it's paying dividends this year.
Washington, to me, feels like a classic dark horse. They really do, to the point where when you look at the NFC East, what's your hierarchy? If it's just assumed that Philadelphia is number one,
yeah,
how's it shake down 2, 3, 4? I don't think it's an obvious, Dallas Giants, Washington, or Giants, Dallas. You just put the teams in a hat and pick them out.
Yeah, this feels like what we were talking about last year that didn't come to fruition. How we were talking about the AFC West might be the best division in the history of football.
Yeah.
They've got obviously Mahomes, and now Russell Wilson and Derek Carr at the time, and obviously Herbert. But Russell forgot how to play, and the Raiders are the Raiders. And, the Chargers going to Charger. So it didn't come true. But tell you what, I went back and watched. The Giants a couple games and watched Daniel Jones play. And I tell you, they've got a couple of guys, Hodgins, who really came on last year. They made a trade for him. I think Joe Shane, excuse me, their GM traded for Buffalo, or maybe they picked him up. He got released, whatever it was. He really started playing well and had a connection with Daniel Jones. And then, they got rid of a couple of guys at receiver, but they've got a couple of tight ends. They went out and got Waller, who's a beast. Bellinger is a kid they drafted last year. He's a really good player. Like, I went and watched, and that offense, and again, it's preseason, but that offense looked pretty well-oiled. And you're right. I mean, you look at Washington, their D-line is absolutely beastly. I already talked about the wide receivers. I mean, I just assume Dallas is going to take a dump in their helmets. So, they'll have a really good – I mean, Dallas will be a playoff team, right? But that's about it. They'll win their 11 games or 12 games.
So
and then
rank the division for me. If you had to handicap it right now, 1 through 4.
Mm-hmm. I probably would go Philly, obviously 1. Then I'd probably go Dallas, Giants, Washington. Washington, based on a young quarterback, there's going to be some growing pains there. I think the Giants, based on, hey, they know what they have in Daniel Jones, and it's only going to grow, I think, but they're not going to put too much on his plate. And I think Dallas is that talented. So that's probably the way I'd go, but I'm with you. I wouldn't be surprised to see any one of those teams, jump over another team. I still think Philly's got that big a rotation on their defensive line. They're that solid. Their O-line can play. They can run the ball. They just do pretty much everything well. So I still think they're the class of that division, but I think it's tightened up quite a bit.
Let's continue to talk about your favorite subject, NFL quarterbacks, because they are the most important players on any football team.
Yeah.
Tua Tagovailoa got into a war words with an FOS, a friend of Stink, Ryan Clark from your ESPN days. And Clark called out Tua, saying that Tua doesn't appear to be in the best of shape and that he spent too much time this offseason getting tattoos. Tua fired back by saying, quote, "I'd appreciate if you kept my name out of your mouth. That's what I'd say." So yet again, proof that the Will Smith, Chris Rock thing has now become a part of all-time American lexicon. Keep your wife's name out of your damn mouth. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers used it in talking about Nathaniel Hackett to Sean Payton. Now you got Tua. Where are you at with Tua? Is this a quarterback who is ascending into the elite category, or somebody that's just kind of in that middle of the pack group?
With the concussion issues and the missing time, and I'll be honest, I was never a Tua guy to begin with, and he was a lot better. He played a lot better than I had anticipated him playing. And, we all kind of laughed. I think everybody laughed when Tyreek Hill came out last year and said, Tua is the best deep ball thrower I've ever been around, or whatever it was. And you're like, you just played with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's come on now. Come on, revisionist history. But I was kind of flabbergasted by how good Tua was, because I just never was much of a Tua guy. Every throw just felt, maybe it's just the left-handed nature, but mechanically, every throw just looks labored. Like, it looks like he's
big wind up and
yeah. But he was deadly accurate on the slant stuff, the quick stuff, the crossing game. That's a big part of their offense, off the play action stuff. And he did have a good deep ball that he threw. If he could stay healthy, I think Tua's got a chance to be really good with the speed they have at the receiver game. Mike McDaniels is a super smart coach, my former ball boy. Man, I hope I was nice to him when he was a ball boy.
With the Broncos, right?
Yeah, I hope I get a Miami game just so I can sit down with Mike McDaniel because it just is so odd to me. Because I remember him like it was I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember exactly. I mean, I was shocked when they said, "Yeah, that guy's the ball boy," and then they had it on Channel 9. They had the whole thing with him being a ball boy, and I was like, "Oh my god, I know exactly who that dude is." So it'll be great. But he's a really good coach. He really does a great job. He's quirky, don't get me wrong, but he does a really good job of tying their run game into into the jet sweep game, into the play action game, into the quarterback run game. Like it's so tied together. And when you can do that and you can make, and this sounds easy, when you can make everything look the same, but you've gotta call it to where the O line doesn't give away. Like it feels everything feels the same. Like that's when you know you're a really good play designer, when you can make everything to a defense look identical, just look like perfectly the same. And I think that's one of his big strengths is his ability to design things, his ability to figure out, how to attack a team in the run game. And then, in week to week, you may say, hey man, this game plan wise, this is how they play this particular front, whatever the front is. And the way they play this is where we can attack them, where we're going to get yards. Here's how we're going to do it. And off of that particular play, even though it's in our menu of plays, right? But we're gonna tweak it a little bit. We're gonna change maybe the entry point of the back, whatever it is. And now we're gonna have the perfect play action set up off of that defense. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna motion and we're gonna personnel wise, we're gonna get in a personnel group, we're gonna motion into a formation that we know they're gonna play this front. And this is how we're gonna attack that front. And then we're going to do it again and again and again. And then we're going to do it again. And we're going to put a play action off of it. And I guarantee you, this is what Kyle Shanahan does all the time. I guarantee you this is going to go for 26 yards and a touchdown. Just watch. And they run it 4 times and they get the look that they're looking for. They're on the 26-yard line, touchdown. It is. His dad did it. Kyle does it. Mike McDaniel worked with Kyle Shanahan forever. And with Mike Shanahan, he does it. They do a really good job of that.
So let me see if I get this straight. While you were playing for the Broncos, winning back-to-back Super Bowls, you had at one time or another running around as kids, teenagers, Mike McDaniel,
Kyle
Shanahan, Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All running around as just kids out there on the practice field.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So they probably owe everything where they're at now to you, correct? I mean,
they owe a lot to me.
You like to take credit for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so. A ton, because they learn watching me. They learn how to be professional. Not from their father, not from Mike, not from Ed McCaffrey. They really learned the professionalism from yours truly. Papa Bear,
I think they also looked at it.
They used to call me Papa Bear.
Papa Bear. They also looked at it and said, man, all that guy does is spend time in cold baths and getting rehab. So we want to maybe go a different route and maybe be on the coaching side of it. One quick thought about the Chiefs. Chris Jones, their Pro Bowl defensive lineman, came out and said he is prepared to sit out until week 8 of the regular season, that he's willing to forfeit his weekly game check, which is a little over $1 million, because in his words, quote, I can afford it. You come back for week 8 because you want to make sure that you get that year of service time towards your pension and everything like that. So that's the magic number. Do you see him holding true to this threat and holding out, or does eventually the player come crawling back? Does it always work out this way?
No, I can see him holding out. I think he'll come back, but I think he'll get a deal. And like, he is such a valuable part of that defense. Remember, at the end of the year, they're winning a Super Bowl. They got 7 rookies playing on defense. I mean, they got their whole defensive backfield, essentially. They had a bunch of guys that were just young players. They get into dime and they'd have like a linebacker and 6 rookie DBs or something. I mean, it was crazy. Maybe it was a linebacker and 1 D lineman and 5 rookie DBs. It was something crazy like that. It was playing for them. But Chris Jones is a focal point. Like when you're playing the Rams, when you're playing the Chiefs, and you break the huddle like the Rams, there's one dude you're looking for as an offense. I mean, you instantly break the huddle and you say, okay, where is it in the Chiefs case? What is he, number 95? Where's 95? Like, we got to find that son of a gun, and we got to have every play. You think about like Aaron Donald, you think about Chris Jones, every play you have to have a plan of how we're going to block him. Every pass protection, every run game. Like, how do we get four hands on him? Meaning, how are we going to double team him? And like the value of that guy, they don't have on Kansas City doesn't have another guy that does that for them. And so, I think Kansas City's slow playing it. I think the Chiefs will get it done eventually. But yeah, he's a guy that they need. He's a guy that has great value to that defense. So I think they need him. Believe it or not, I think Kansas City needs him more than he needs them right now.
It's a great standoff. You've got Chris Jones. He's got 1 year left on his contract, making about $19.5 million. But he's coming off a year in which he just had 15.5 sacks. His value will never be higher. And so this is a classic standoff, right? And you think eventually it'll be the Chiefs that blink first.
I do. And remember, man, he's not your prototypical D end. He is like a 3-4 D end. So he's sliding in over guards. Like, he's an inside. I think of him as not an edge player. He's an inside, like, defensive tackle type player. And you get 15.5 sacks when you're inside and you're always doubled. He'd be like the best defensive lineman in football right now. If you were grading guys, you would talk Aaron Donald first. And I'm not so sure you wouldn't put Chris Jones number 2.
Folks, this is the part of the show you're going to love, because I'm getting ready to just make Mark's head explode right here on the podcast. But Mark, Chris Jones still got 1 year left on his contract, the contract that he signed. Doesn't he have any value to his name, any honor to his name? He put his name on that contract. He needs to honor that contract.
You need to honor. That's a great point, Mike. Honor the contract. I'm flying out to Green Bay tonight. I'm leaving Alaska, flying out to Green Bay. And one of my favorite players, maybe you've heard of him, Bobby Wagner from Utah State, going to be a Hall of Famer, perennial All-Pro. Last year, this is the craziest thing. He's back in Seattle, by the way. 1 year with the Rams. He spent 1 year with the Rams. He signed a 5-year, like $60, $70 million contract with the Rams. They cut him after 1 year. Like, it's the craziest thing that for the player, you can do that, and nobody seems to have an issue. But if the player says, hey, man, I have outperformed this contract, I want more money, he should honor it. The teams, no. With teams, we don't need you guys to honor it. But the players, on the other hand, we need you to honor it. So I hope for the Broncos' sake, I hope Chris Jones sits out the entire year. And I hope, that Kansas City Chiefs are horrible. I doubt that's going to happen, but that's my hope.
Well, safe trip from Anchorage, Alaska to Green Bay, Wisconsin. I assume that's not a direct flight.
No, I fly to Chicago. I got about a half-hour layover, so I'm going to have to, in the morning, all bleary-eyed, I'm going to have to jump out of the plane and hightail across the terminal there and find, because the plane to Green Bay is one of them little puddle jumper jets, so that's probably a 40-minute flight to Green Bay, and then I'll meet with the Seahawks and kind of hang out. It'll be good. It'll be a good time, and then it's all Seahawks broadcast. They don't even care if you know who the Packers are. So
no, yeah. Well, have a good call. Have a good call. Anchorage to Chicago. How long of a flight is that?
I think it's 6 hours and change, I believe. 6.5 hours. Something like that.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, safe travels, and
Thank you, buddy.
for all the people there in Seattle that are watching this, get ready. You're going to get a big taste of stink over the weekend. You're going to be doing the local broadcast back to Seattle, so enjoy that.
Yeah, a lot of great storylines. The Seattle Seahawks, they should have a really good team. As a matter of fact, I just talked to Eric Yarbrough, who's the wide receiver coach for the Rams. Just called me just because the Rams are practicing against Denver. So he just called. He goes, "Are you coming over? Are you coming over?" And I go, "Hey man, I'm up in Alaska." So we caught up, but he's like, "Hey man, we're going to bounce back. We're going to be pretty good this year." Yarbs wouldn't lie to me about that. He's a vandal. So he's one of the great vandals. So that division, speaking of divisions that could be good, we talked about the NFC East. I think the NFC West with the Rams and obviously San Francisco is the kind of the class. Seattle is not going to be a slouch. They're going to be pretty damn good. So that division, Arizona, but the rest of that division, I think, is going to be pretty good.
Well, have a good call.
Thank you, buddy. Hey, for everybody involved in the Stinkin Truth podcast, we appreciate you guys so much. Please download, click, subscribe, whatever it is you do. We would appreciate that. You got to subscribe more. I don't think we have enough subscribers. So if Mike and I are going to make extra money, you guys got to step up your game.
Please.
Right? Step your game up. And I mean that. Because, Mike, I got to buy Mike a new shirt because that's awful. That's a Bronco shirt.
It's a Broncos. Am I violating trademarks or something here?
I don't know. I thought that was I just assumed that orange was a Q's shirt.
Yeah.
I assumed you were in Q's. Did Russell Wilson give that to you and say,
"High knees, baby"?
After he gave it to you, he said, he goes, "That's right.
That's right.
All right, man.
Mike, wear the shirt. That's right.
Later. You look good. We need to make a fun for Mike, a new shirt for Mike. Let's go, people. All right. Take care, buddy.